Good day, Dr. Nelia Prieto. My name is Michael Magbanua, and today I'd like to share some thoughts on how identity is constructed in world literature. What do we mean by constructing identity? When literary scholars talk about constructing identity, they're referring to the way stories create, perform, or challenge our sense of who people are, both as individuals and as members of a group. Authors use characters, narrators, and cultural settings to show how gender, race, class, nationality, and other factors shape how people see themselves and are seen by others. In other words, identities in literature aren't fixed labels. They're shaped by the times, politics, and social context in which the stories are told. The first one is the intersectionality and politics of identity. One big trend in recent literary studies is the idea of intersectionality, a term borrowed from social theory. Instead of thinking about gender, race, class, or sexualities separately, intersectionality looks at how these categories overlap and affect each other. For example, a character might be both woman and an immigrant, which shapes her experiences differently than if she fit only one category. Scholars are now using digital tools to track and analyze these intersections, especially in online communities where people curate multiple versions of themselves. At the same time, many critics point out that identity politics, our tendency to view art through the lens of social and political group identities, has become inseparable from literature. Cultural critic Jared Marshall Polin argues that modern readers are often asked to take sides in ongoing social debates, making it hard to evaluate books purely on artistic merits. He reminds us that while social engagement is important, a novel or poem should still be judged by its craft and creativity, not just by the identity it represents. Another fascinating issue is how digital technology changes identity. In young adult novels, for example, characters often express themselves through social media posts, text messages, or online profiles. These digital spaces let teens experiment with different personas, but they also raise questions about authenticity. How can we tell if someone's online image matches who they really are? Educators and researchers have noticed that online interactions are reshaping literacy itself. Adolescents now learn to read and write, not just on paper but across screens. And what they share online can influence who they become offline. These stories remind us that identity is no longer confined to the physical world. It has moved into the digital realm, where it can be curated, edited, and even performed for an audience. The third issue is about decentering whiteness and decolonizing the canon. For centuries, Western literature has presented whiteness as a default perspective. Classic novels like Jane Eyre and Moby Dick were written from white, Eurocentric viewpoints, often ignoring or misrepresenting other cultures. Post-colonial writers, authors from formerly colonized countries, have challenged this, telling their own stories and highlighting the effects of colonialism. Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, for instance, offers a Nigerian perspective on British colonization, pushing readers to rethink narratives that center only on European experiences. Modern authors like Toni Morrison and Jhumpa Lahiri go further by exploring the complexities of racial and cultural identity in America, India, and beyond. Critics also note that well-meaning books like To Kill a Mockingbird can fall into the white savior trap, where white characters are portrayed as heroes who save marginalized people, leaving those people without agency. Decentering whiteness means making space for diverse voices and questioning whose stories get told and celebrated. Closely related to decolonization is a debate over representation and appropriation. Some argue that writers should be free to imagine characters outside their own backgrounds. Others worry that this can lead to misrepresentation or cultural theft. Polin notes that in our highly politicized climate, accusations of appropriation can chill creative risk-taking, while writers from marginalized groups may feel pressured to speak for the entire community. Young adult novels that use text messages and social media is often show characters embellishing or hiding parts of themselves online, inviting readers to question what's real and what's performance. Meanwhile, critics warn that stories centered on white savior figures can reinforce old hierarchies. These tensions remind us that authentic representation isn't easy. It requires empathy, research, and respect for the communities being portrayed. So, how should writers navigate these issues? Pauling suggests that authors need to separate their roles as artists from their roles as activists. Even if total separation is impossible, a book's value shouldn't hinge solely on whether it serves a political cause. At the same time, writers are citizens who can't ignore the social impact of their work. Striking this balance, engaging with social issues without letting group identity dictate every aesthetic choice, is one of the biggest challenges facing contemporary literature. Future research also points to the need for more nuanced analysis. Scholars note that identity has many axes beyond race and gender, including age, disability, religion, and more. Digital media with its constant flux of images and voices add another layer of complexity. The goal is to develop literary criticism that acknowledges this complexity without reducing characters to simple categories. To sum up, identity construction in literature reflects wider social changes and debates. Intersectionality encourages us to see characters as living at the crossroads of multiple identities. Digital technology has created new spaces for expressing and performing identity. Post-colonial and contemporary writers challenge the dominance of whiteness and highlight overlooked stories. At the same time, questions about appropriation, authenticity, and artistic freedom force us to think carefully about how we create and consume literature. For us as readers and students of world literature, these debates are not abstract. They shape the books we choose, the voices we amplify, and the way we interpret stories. By paying attention to how identities are constructed and contested, we deepen our understanding of literature and of ourselves. Thank you for listening. I hope this overview of the 4 major trends and issues of constructs in identity in world literature to spark discussion and help us all think more critically about identity in the books we read. Again, this is Michael M. Magbanwa presenting for PhD 3317. Thank you, Doc Nelia Prieto.